catch you on both ends, if you don't mind.
Hello, everyone.
So I want to also start off by updating something that you guys probably already know, and that is they stopped officially evacuating the people that want to leave Afghanistan. When was it? That's last Tuesday or Monday?
The 30th. All my days have run into one another. So
Yeah.
Whenever the 30th was.
Right. Okay. So they stopped officially evacuating, but there are efforts going on to get people out of the country. So we'll get that. We'll get to that here in a moment. But I also I think we should start on what it's like over there, or what it's like during wartime. I want to start off with Rich, because you had the frontline wartime experience in Iraq, right? So we want to talk about and then I'll ask you, Rebecca, what was your experience as well? So, Rich, why don't you share with us? You don't have to share us any details you don't want to share, but just share us briefly what it's like during wartime, especially nowadays. A lot of people, I don't think, realize the grind and the grit and also the danger.
Well, just a brief overview. I did my first tour to Fallujah, Iraq, in the spring of 2004. That was after Baghdad had been taken, but we didn't really have control of the entire country, so there were still a lot of very dangerous hotspots, Fallujah being the main one at the time. During that, we did Operation Vigilant Resolve, where we attempted to invade the city. Unfortunately, we took so many casualties. It was a new tactic. There were a lot of lessons learned. Tried to do it very politically. Unfortunately, it just wasn't worth the losses at the time. So I volunteered to extend for a second tour out there, where we had Operation Phantom Fury. We improvised, adapted, and overcame, and did eventually take the city. And then I left that was back to the spring, so it was 1 year total. And then I went back in the fall of 2006 and left in the spring of 2007. Went to the same place, stayed at the same compound. And it was really interesting to see the changes of the city, but the memory that sticks out to me the most, I was attached to a reconnaissance platoon for a little while during my second tour. And we had a chance to actually live in the city and the small parts of the town, and we stayed in the homes of the villagers. And it was a really cool experience, because we found that, outside of the city where we were most of the time, the people really appreciated us being there. They felt safe while we were there. We compensated them for using their homes. We paid them for the things that we took, or damages that they had incurred. And we really tried to build a healthy relationship. And, sometimes they would bring us some fresh meat, some home yogurt. We always had plenty of dates. We had some chai time, which is their tea. And so it really taught me that, people are people. It doesn't matter where you're from. We all have a story, and it was just a really humbling experience.
But when you said dates, that didn't mean like you went out on a date. Those meant those, right?
No, there's very strict regulations on dating.
I see.
During wartime.
Gotcha.
You're not allowed to do that.
So how long were you over there?
It was a little over 1.5 years total.
Wow, that's a long time to be in a different country, culture, environment, that sort of thing.
Yeah, very much. Right. Yeah, it gave me a lot of gratitude and appreciation for the little things that we have here, like air conditioning, indoor plumbing, flushable toilets. And even kind of if you've ever tried to do construction, you know how hard it is to get a building permit. But seeing an environment where there are no codes, there are no regulations, everybody can just do what we want, you really understand why we have that structure and that foundation, that order that helps keep everything running nice and smooth, why our garbage gets picked up on the weekends. Because they don't have that there. The whole city just was not pleasant to smell. And with that, the downfall, of course, is I didn't have a relationship with Jesus at the time, so I had a lot of resentments as well, and it was quite challenging coming back. I'll kind of cut that short there, but
All right, okay. We can get to that later. How's that? And Rebecca, from what I understand, it's Kuwait, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Right. So what's your experience, or what would you like to share that maybe some people here would not know?
Sure. So, hi, I'm Rebecca. This is the first time I've been to church in a long time, so I feel like God was like shining down on
Hey, let's
me.
clap for that, okay?
So I'm happy to be here with you all. Yeah, so I spent about 3 years in combat between Iraq, Kuwait, and my last tour was in Afghanistan. 2011, prior to 2011, we still had the combat exclusion policy, so women weren't allowed to be attached to frontline units, like some of the units that you were in. And so 2011 was the first time that I was attached to special operations, which are Navy SEALs, Special Forces, Marine Recon. And at that time, I was working with the women of Afghanistan because, unlike here, to your point, which is, you're grateful sometimes to be in the U.S. when you go to a combat zone like that because 80% of women in Afghanistan can't read. Almost 90% don't have access to just clean drinking water. And so a lot of the things that we were doing were, there's no female doctors there. And if you're a woman in Afghanistan, you cannot see a male doctor. And so a lot of times you are, a lot of them die during childbirth just because there is no doctor to be able to help them. And so a lot of what we did was do a lot of training, medical training with midwives over there, create schools for young girls to learn in, just because when the Taliban was there, being an educated young girl was illegal. You would go to prison for a lot of things that would be kind of unfathomable here. And to your point, which is like I think every young soldier or Marine eventually has, if they don't find God or a relationship with the Lord in combat, which a lot of them do. I think at some point you have to, you realize how short life is and how fleeting it is. And, a lot of people, come to Jesus or the Lord in that way. Some don't, and some come back and have a really hard time, and I feel like you have a lot of young men, specifically when we looked at like the bombing that took place, I don't even know how many days ago it was, those Marines that were on the front line were 18, 19 years old. So, I think that anyone who's over there, changes, and, I think combat, conflict, war changes anybody and your outlook on life and, and what you want to do with your life. So, to your point, and I love this man who has, him and I have gotten to many like heated discussions, but it always comes from such a passionate place of like wanting to serve veterans, because a lot of them are coming back and, having a lot of challenges because of that. When you have less than 1% of, our country that are actually serving, and of that, less than that deployed, very few people, unlike World War II and Vietnam, when it was your neighbors and your friends and people going over, there are very few people that are serving. And so the amount of people that understand that experience and understand what people need gets smaller and smaller every time that number goes down. So, I think it was a challenge for both of us to go over there, and you have to deal with death and all those things in the way that you can deal with it. What we're trying to do now is a lot of people that we went into homes with and were translators for us, or women that we worked with over there, sadly, we're not able to get out. A lot of the flights that you're hearing about were people who were either U.S. citizens or people who had SIVs, so they had been through the program. But I'll give you an example. Prior to 2006, if you worked with us or you helped us, you let us into your homes and we were allowed to kind of shelter with you, and you worked with the U.S. military, you were not included in the SIV program. And so those were years that we were at war of people that were helping us that were not included or allowed on those flights. So a big part of what we did was try to raise some money. We raised about 7 million, which was incredible. I think it spoke to a lot of people who realized like it's wrong to leave those people there. To buy aircraft to bring them out, and we've been working with countries like Uganda and so many different countries to not only allow those refugees, but working with the IRC to actually help finance, because a lot of those people were leaving with nothing but the shirts on their back. You know, what we didn't realize is that there was a lot of veterans who had served in wars who are coming to volunteer. So that's why I look like I haven't slept, just because I haven't. We have a group of about 50 people down in North Carolina right now, working around the clock, talking to people who are in hiding, and trying to get them out on buses, and then being able to kind of shuttle them to a country after. So it's been a big challenge, and I appreciate this man right here who kind of recognized that and said, hey, what can we do, or how can I help? And I feel like, this idea of service that I think is kind of organic to a lot of people who serve, it's like, what can I do? And a big part of me was like, I feel like part of my soul is in Afghanistan with some of these people. And so a lot of people were like, hey, how can I help? And so I just appreciate you having us here and kind of talking about it and shedding some light on it.
Well, I think we got to raise this awareness, and thank you. I mean, I feel myself, I'm getting touched, talking about this. And one thing I don't think we realized was, or however whatever the proper verb or pronoun is the relationships you guys had over there. And same thing, you mentioned it too. The relationships by the people that you say, and I think that's what really got me. That you guys developed relationships over there. You just didn't go there, did your thing, and left. And that also, would you say that's also part of the passion or driving you to, beside your probably innate servant attitude in general? But well, maybe you can just share how important that was, those relationships you had over there, both of you actually.
Sure. I mean, this started with like a few people who had, when you're an interpreter for someone or you've worked with someone over there, it's the same as being like, it would be the same as being a soldier or serving alongside somebody. And if that person like called you up and said, hey, they're going to kill me. Can you please help me out? One of the interpreters that we're trying to get out served with my buddy Hank. The Taliban tried to assassinate this man 2 times, so he's blind in one eye and lost a leg. He's trying to get his family out. They targeted his house, so he's kind of in hiding right now, and we're it's one of those things you can't ignore the phone call.
Right.
So when they call you and they say, hey, I'm here, is there anything you can do? I just, at some point you can't, you have to be able to I think for anything, if somebody is in a position where they need help and they ask for that help, I just don't know a lot of people that would turn their back on that. So
And by the way, I can definitely testify that women in combat have, I mean, you deserve a special medal just for that, because it is not a lady-friendly environment by any means. And,
no, but there's awesome dudes. I just met this guy and I'm like, you just seem like a nice man. So I appreciate that.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all that you've done over there and all that you're going to continue to do. And in terms of the personal relationships, I'm going to kind of slightly sidestep for a minute. So one of the ways to sort of get through the combat experience is to dissociate, or to disconnect from your feelings. That's something that military training teaches. It's ingrained in our society and how we're raised. Boys don't cry. And I feel like that's a really common human thing that we go through, especially the challenge as men. And but eventually, Jesus does cut out that stony heart and give us one of flesh. So the relationships that I had with those people over there, it didn't really hit me until after I got saved. And then I started to reflect on the experiences that I had and see those people a lot differently in a different light. Because I just, that I guess that was my way of protecting my inner child and my inner ego, so that I could focus on the mission and do what had to be done. And so yeah, praise Jesus.
Well, you know what? Just to share a little bit about my relationship with my wife. So exactly that. Exactly that. I wasn't. I was taught. I was taught not to cry. I was taught not to cry, so I didn't cry for, I don't know, 38 years. So I met my wife when I was 38 or whatever. And I was just coming to the Lord and really just getting into, there's got to be something else more, because how I'm doing in life's not working. And I got sober and then started becoming a believer. And then at the beginning stages, I had met my wife. So then when we would have conversations, he would just pour out. I was just like a crybaby. In fact, I couldn't stop, and so I just identified with that.
He comes like a flood.
Yeah, it was like, what's wrong, honey? I don't know. I'm just crying. I just got to cry, sort of stuff. So, yeah, I like that softening of the heart stuff. It's really good, because there is a form of healing that comes with that, I think, that release, So I'll ask Rich first, and then we'll close out with you, and then how we can help you. But what are you doing now with your life outside of the armed forces? I kind of know, but I want them to hear.
Thanks. Well, after many years of wandering and stumbling, right now I'm a full-time film student. Actually hoping to transfer to USC next year, which would be wonderful. But either way, I'll go where the Lord makes a way. So, but I wanted to do that because just experiencing the power of testimonies and sharing stories, that's how we undo the chaos and the mess that the enemy created. Yeah, I feel like the media and what we have here could be such a powerful force in really transforming and changing the hearts and minds of the American people. And because of the influence we have around the world, that'll just pour out and overflow. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what the country and the industry and the world's like in 10 years from now, especially after all this humbling time.
Right. Yeah. Rebecca, how about yourself? I know two already, but I'd like for others to hear. Hello.
She's the problem. Hey, yeah, so I'm also a writer and director. I teach intro to directing at Sundance, at the Sundance Collab. I've, currently directing something for ABC that will be coming out soon. So, yeah, I think the same thing when I came back. I feel like there are stories, and I think the most powerful thing you can do as someone who has experienced life, and kind of the way that we've done, is to kind of pass on those stories. And, we've seen it from ancient times when people would come back from war and they would say, hey, this is what I learned, and this is fire. These are the lessons that we learned. We've seen it throughout the history of, World War II and Vietnam vets. And I think that there's a lot to be learned from, not talking about myself, but I've interviewed so many veterans who have some amazing stories and have so much to offer this world. And so, that's what I want to do. I enjoy writing, and that's what I'm going to continue doing.
Along those lines, maybe both of you can comment on this. We're getting towards the end here. I've done a film or two, Mickey Mouse documentary. I don't know however you want to call it. And what I learned very early on, me being a Marine Corps veteran, not going to war. By the way, I was jealous for people who did go. It sounds kind of weird, but usually, hey, we're in the military, that's what you're supposed to do. But I thought, wow, I'm going to do stories about people who have PTSD or who are going through their stuff to trying to come out of it. And what I learned was, that's not the only story. right? It's like somehow we've gotten, I think we're coming out of that, but there was a time where that's all anybody wanted to talk about. And what I had learned was there's more. I mean, that's a part of some people, right? Did you, I'm assuming was my experience the same? You know, I'm not the same, but am I calling it like how I saw it? That's not the only story. That's not the only thing we should be talking about, but we should be talking about it, right?
Yeah, I think that in a very complex world, sometimes people like to simplify things, right? If you're a soldier, you must have this experience. If you're a Christian, you must have this experience. And I feel like that simplicity takes away from the complexity of life and who you are and where you come up and how you experience life. And I think Hollywood has done a really good job of like promoting either the hero or the broken soldier, and there's so much in between of just incredible service and what people have been through that I think is worthy of sharing and listening to.
That's awesome. And then finally, Christian persecution is pretty strong over there.
Yeah, a huge majority of like what the emails that I keep getting are what the Taliban started doing was going to local mosques and saying, who stopped coming to this mosque? And most of those people were Christians who are now in hiding and trying to get out because the Taliban, obviously is very strict as far as their faith and very antiquated beliefs of a distorted version of the Muslim faith, I would say, which lends itself to persecuting women and Christians, or anyone who doesn't identify with their faith. So a big part of like who we are trying to pull out of there are a lot of people who left that faith, and whether they're Christian or anything else, just trying to get out for fear of persecution. So.
Yeah. So how can we help? We've set up a fund on Revive LA. So revivela.net has a fund. I forgot what we called it, but if you scroll down, you'll see it. But how can we help?
Yeah, I was saying before, we have about 50 vets who are in an op center in North Carolina, right outside of Fort Bragg, and they keep that going 24/7. So right now in Kabul time, it's what is it? It's probably night there right now. So a lot of times when it's night here, we have to be up to be able to service people trying to get out, trying to guide them. Our interpreters, a lot of them who have come back on some of those planes, drove right down to North Carolina with nothing. That their families are with them. They're sleeping in their cars, trying to be able to help some of those other people come out. So this is something that's gonna, I think, just because we don't have, the State Department has really said, okay, we're done. And that mission for a lot of us is not done. So, any money donated is really to buy food for a lot of these vets who are living there, buy some clothing for some of the specifically Afghan interpreters and their families who have nothing right now, and who are living down there in Fort Bragg with them. I said like they're charging blocks, and so I'm grateful somebody handed me some there, because our phones are just running 24/7. Yeah, so anything, and I'll give you a list of it, but any money will be donated there. We're happy to like provide photos and so you can see some happy vets. Laundry service is a thing. A lot of them are washing their clothes in the sink because there's no like washing machines on site. So we're just trying to pay for some laundry service to come and take care of them. So, yeah.
Well, so far, I think we've got about $1,000. So somehow,
wow.
somehow
Thank you.
I'm going to have to get that over to you. Somehow figure that out.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we're up to about 1,000. And then, as you see, people are starting to get, because we did do that checklist for you. And I didn't print out a copy. So if you want a copy of the checklist, I'll have to get it over to you. But other than that, well, thank you for joining us, our little humble courtyard. And
this is beautiful. I'm going to come here every Sunday.
We would love to have you here, actually. And this is being professionally recorded too, so
nice.
You can also use that as part of getting further support for
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's give a hand for Rebecca and Rich.
Thanks, Barry.
And let the band come on up as we'll start ending towards service. Man, that was awesome. Thank you.
Great.